Purvabhyasena tenaiva. So purva abhyas, by the past practice, what happens is one gets tenaiva. By that one is attracted. Purvabhyasena tenaiva. Riyate. Riyate means it's one is attracted. It's almost riyate ya avashopi saha. Avashya is it's almost as if one feels that this is not in my control. I am automatically attracted. Riyate ya avashopi saha. Such a person. Riyate ya avashopi saha. Jigyasurapi yogasya. So jigyasu, such a person becomes jigyasu, becomes inquisitive. Yogasya, what is yoga here? The connection with ultimate reality. Such a person becomes inquisitive about yoga. And then what happens? Shabda Brahma. Shabda Brahma is the word, conventional words of wisdom. Ativartate. One goes beyond that. Shabda Brahmati Vartate. Purva. Let's recite it. I'll recite once and then we'll recite it together. Okay. So first responsively and then collectively. Purvabhyasena tenaiva. Riyate yavashopi saha. Jigyasurapi yogasya. Shabda Brahmati Vartate. Let's do it together now, as much as possible for all of us together. Purvabhyasena tenaiva. Riyate yavashopi saha. Jigyasurapi yogasya. Shabda Brahmati Vartate. Two more times. Purvabhyasena tenaiva. Riyate yavashopi saha. Jigyasurapi yogasya. Shabda Brahmati Vartate. Purvabhyasena tenaiva. Riyate yavashopi saha. Jigyasurapi yogasya. Shabda Brahmati Vartate. So, in this particular section of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is talking about the phenomena of spiritual awakening, or it can be spiritual reawakening. How is it, or why is it that some people start looking for spirituality or start becoming interested in spirituality and others do not? So what is spiritual awakening and how does this happen? So here, if we consider, I'll be using this as a to draw and depict. So if we are here in the world is in front of us. And for most of us, we are focused on the world. But there is some reality beyond this world and bigger than this world. Now that reality is called as God, that reality is called as Krishna. Whatever, ekam sat vipra bahuda vadanti. The Rig Veda says that one truth is known by many names. So this shift in awareness, how is it that some people start looking for something beyond this world? Something that matters more for them. So when and how and why does this happen? So Krishna is talking about this here as a process which goes over multiple lifetimes. So he's purvabhyasena. He's talking about people who have practiced some spirituality in their previous lives. And because of that purvabhyas, that previous practice, riyate, they just feel naturally attracted. What does mean naturally attracted? I was just in, I live in all over America. I was in North Carolina. And I met one American boy, and he said that it was from my childhood. I was fascinated by India, and if there's any Indian, I would always want to talk with them. And I read about India, and I was very interested in the spiritual side of India. And I was very disappointed to find that I knew more about the spirituality of India than my Indian friends. Of course, my knowledge was secondary, but he says, then it's, I was sitting at my home and suddenly I heard some sound. I said, what is this sound? And he says, do you hear that? I got told my parents and my siblings. No, we don't hear anything. Don't you hear that sound? Some singing is going on. And in the distance, some singing was going on. And then he said, okay, I want to go and see what it is. Okay, you can go. Be careful is what I told him. He literally felt himself like as if something was pulling him. He ran in that direction. And there, the Rath Yatra festival is going on. And he had heard the sound of the cymbals and the mridanga. He just ran there. And normally, most people, when the Rath Yatra festival or something like that, it's more like a spectacle, a cultural spectacle. So they, okay, what are people doing? People look at the chariot, people look at the people who are dancing, people look at the whole cultural spectacle. But he said, for me, everything was fascinating, but just I felt as if I was just drawn straight to the deities. And now Jagannath, from a Western perspective, is Krishna looks attractive to our eyes. Jagannath doesn't look that attractive. So I just felt it's fascinating. And then he said, I just couldn't understand it. And then he got introduced to devotees, started practicing bhakti, started reading the Bhagavad Gita. And then he read this particular verse. That Purvabhyasena te naiva, by previous practice, riyate ya avashopi saha. One gets automatically attracted. So one gets automatically attracted, and that's what happened to him. Now, how exactly did this happen? So that process Krishna is talking about over here. Jigyasur api yogasya. So the person becomes jigyasu. It's gone off. Okay. Jigyasu is a person becomes inquisitive. And yogasya. So here, there's two aspects. When we are going through the world, and there is the world in front of us, and there is some reality beyond us. There are these two factors. You could say these are. One is there is a spontaneous attraction. So there is attraction. Generally, when we use the word attraction, it is more in terms of emotions. It's almost like we are pulled. People say sometimes, I fell in love with someone. Now, why don't you say rise in love? I fall in love. Because it's many reasons, but specifically it's like a force which just pulls us. So, it force which pulls us. So this is more of a at the level of emotions. But then after that, jigyasu. Jigyasu is there is curiosity. Okay, I'm attracted, but what am I attracted to? Why am I attracted to this? What is all this about? And then Shabda Brahma Ativartate. We all learn some conventional wisdom. Conventional wisdom means, okay, you get, and conventional wisdom is not to be devalued. Conventional wisdom should be that, okay, you study well, you get a job, you get married, you be responsible, you settle down in life. It's important for many people, especially as the family structures is destabilizing and imploding in the West. And that conventional wisdom, many people don't hold on to. But there's people go beyond that. Yeah, all this is good. But is there something more to life beyond this? So, Shabda Brahma Ativartate. One starts thinking that there has to be something more to life. And that is when a person has this spiritual awakening. And that's when the person starts growing steadily on the spiritual path. So let's look at this book. So this is My latest book is called Prayers Inspired by the Bhagavad Gita. So I've taken about 122 verses from the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. Do we have enough copies for everyone, or all are over now? More are coming. Okay. So you can share, those of you who have nearby, with someone else. Actually, let me see if I was able to download this over here. Okay. Yes, it's not been downloaded. Okay, I was planning to read a little bit more, but I'll only some things wrong. So what I have done in this verses, in this book, is the Gita is a source of wisdom, but the Gita is also an expression of Krishna's heart. It's not just philosophy. And I felt that among all the books of wisdom that I have studied, I have connected most with the Gita. And the verses of the Gita are not just sources of wisdom for me, they are like personal friends for me. So I cannot say for all the verses, but some verses I feel are very close friends for me. Just like if we have a friend and we want to know more and more about that friend. And one way we know more about a friend is by meeting them in different contexts. Maybe if we know them at work, then how are they at home? If you go for a outing, how are they? So like that, normally we look at the verse of the Gita as philosophical wisdom. But I saw that Kulashekara Maharaj, in one of his prayers in the Mukundamala Stotra, has taken a Bhagavad Gita verse as an inspiration for offering a personal prayer. So there is a verse in the Bhagavad Gita 12.6 and 7 where Krishna says, Teshamaham samudharta mrityu samsara sagarat. Says, I swiftly deliver you from the ocean of material existence. So Krishna is saying this, that I will deliver you. And Kulashekara Maharaj is a great devotee in the South Indian Alavara tradition. So he says that samsara sagar nimagnam ananta deenam uddharatum arasi hare purushottamosmi. So he says, I am drowning in this ocean of material existence. Please, it behooves you, O Lord, to deliver me from this ocean. So what Krishna is saying, I will do, Kulashekara Maharaj is saying, please do it, O Lord. So it is, he's converting Krishna's assurance into a personal prayer. So like that, I've taken these verses, I took inspiration from there. And many times when we pray, we can have our personal prayers. So for all of us, our prayers can come from two different sources. Now prayers can be traditional or scriptural prayers. So we recited some mantras right now when we started the session. We have Mangalarti, we have Tulsi Arti. These are traditional prayers. And they bring authority with them. This is the way great saints and sages, great devotees have prayed. Now there are also personal prayers. Now personal prayers are what come from our heart. And they bring a certain level of authenticity. Because it is our situation that we are trying to deal with. So I felt that if we could somehow combine both, that we could take a scriptural verse or a scriptural point and then take that, especially from give as a verse, as a starting point for our personal prayers. So that's what I try to do over here. We can have authority and we can have authenticity. Both. So this particular prayer, so what I have done here is in this book, I've given a one sentence prayer. I've taken one picture of Krishna, a beautiful deity from various temples in India. In the future volume of the book, I hope to have pictures from the deities in North America. So we have, then there are different deities over here. There's one sentence prayer is there, then the Gita verse followed by a poetic rendition of the Gita verse. Sometimes we forget that the Gita is poetry because we see it primarily as philosophy. So a poetic rendition so that it can touch our heart more. And then I've composed a personal prayer that how could I see this verse as relevant for me in my spiritual life and how I can offer a prayer inspired by that. So you arrange for spiritual awakening in the next lifetime. So here Krishna is talking about the yogi, a spiritual seeker who practices spirituality but is unable to complete the journey. And then that person is born next time, the next life Krishna arranges for the spiritual awakening. So by past practice, one is drawn along by a pull that seems overwhelmingly strong. Seeking with curiosity yoga's timeless way, the yogi goes beyond all empty verbal display. So who would like to read? Anyone would like to read for the first paragraph? Yes, please. You have second mic.
My dear Lord, few experiences are as faith boosting as seeing how spiritual reawakening occurs. Extraordinary indeed are those souls who come into this life with a strong spiritual calling from their previous lives. O Lord, that calling often makes them feel out of place in this world, where most people respond to the callings of their senses. Even if they try to fit into the world, they just can't. Their spiritual calling, my Lord, seems to have a life of its own.
Yes. See, sooner or later, everyone comes in life to a stage where they feel, I don't belong here. Now, I'm out of place. Now, this can mean many different senses. Sometimes, if we come from one country to another country, then we might feel culturally out of place. We might feel relationally out of place. We might feel socially out of place. Sometimes we might feel, nowadays with so much political polarization, might feel politically out of place. And so we all feel out of place sometimes. And we may try to fit in. But sometimes this is just too much. This is not who I am. This is not where I belong. So feeling out of place is something which is inevitable in the course of life. But when that feeling out of place comes, then what is the place that we try to go towards? So that is actually that sense of feeling unsettled in life is actually a prompter for spiritual awakening. So broadly in our life, we are driven by two forces. One is our needs and the other is our desires. We have our needs and we have our desires. So for example, if we consider a student, the student has a sense of responsibility, then the need is I need to study. And especially when they come to teenage, they come to youth, then the hormones start awakening, the body starts changing, and so many desires start coming up over there. So now these two forces, they are constantly acting in our lives. And so in some phases in our lives, what happens is our needs pull us in one direction and our desires pull us in the completely opposite direction. And one doesn't have to have a spiritual for doing this. Even in material life. So for example, if somebody is a student, then a student, one part of them might want to be I want to be an achiever in life. I want to do something worthwhile. I want to do something wonderful. The other part of the life, I want to enjoy life. I want to have fun. I want to go to parties. I want to hang out with friends. I want to do so many things. So our needs and desires, they pull us in different directions. Now, if we consider a person who is newborn, is a newborn baby. Now, at that point, the newborn baby, it's what the Vedic texts call as Upanishads call the Annamaya Kosh. All of existence is potential food. So the babies experience everything through their tongue. Now, whatever they find, they will put in their mouth. Now, initially, a newborn baby may not even be when the baby is suckling the mother's milk. Initially, the baby is not even aware that there is a person over here and the person loves me. Just, oh, I'm getting some nice thing, I want it. But then gradually, as the baby grows, okay, this milk is wonderful. It's coming from a person who loves me, who cares for me, who will comfort me, who will protect me. So now, as we grow up, what happens is we start. Initially, this drive is just okay. Whatever happens, I cry, and somebody comes and attends to our needs. That's what the baby does. But as we start growing, we start recognizing that there is this tension between the two. See, a newborn baby is, whenever the baby feels hungry, the baby will start crying. And the baby doesn't have any sense of time or any kind of schedule. The parenting, especially newborn, is more than a 24/7 job. Yeah? But then as we grow, it is partly the responsibility of the parents to create some structure. You sleep at this time, you wake at this time, you take food at this time. Even if you don't feel hungry, you take food at this time. You feel hungry in between, okay, you can have small snack, but don't eat too much. You can take it at meal time. So bring some structure. Now, what is the structure actually doing? Structure is actually basically trying to address this force of our needs and our desires. That, okay, you have certain needs. These are the time when the needs will be fulfilled. And now, if suppose somebody is an adult and suddenly at night they feel hungry, they get what you call as a snack attack. They're attacked by the desire to have a snack. Now, okay, even if they want to eat, it's not that they should go and disturb the whole house. Okay, that's your desire. Now, okay, you can do it, but do it in a way that does not disturb others. Now when I say desires and needs, I'm basically using this, we could go into a philosophical conceptualization of what is the difference between the two. But basically, I'm using it in a very simple functional sense. Desires and needs, the key difference is needs are what we need for, what are required for survival. Desires are what are required for pleasure. Now, is this a complete differentiation? Not necessarily. Now, we don't just want to survive. We also want pleasure in life. So, desires, now, does the fulfillment of needs also give some pleasure? Yes, it does, of course. If we are very hungry and we get some food, we get some pleasure at that time. So, we could say fulfillment of needs also gives some pleasure. And we could say now sometimes somebody says fulfilling some desires may also feel like a need. For an alcoholic with a very strong conditioning, that alcoholic may feel that if I don't drink, I will die. And now if you tell them, if you drink, you will die, they say, at least I'll die happy. So there are times when this tension between the two can become very destructive. So what happens is, now when we talk about the difference between needs and desires, this is where actually the spirituality starts the awakening, the potential for that is present over here. Now what happens, let's consider the need for food. None of us can survive without food. At the same time, many people don't survive because of the food they eat. We may eat unhealthy food. So what happens over there is, the food at one level is necessary. But when we fulfill a need only for pleasure, or the fulfillment of need is the only pleasure in our life, they're two slightly different things. So if a person eats food only for pleasure, say, okay, you have rice and sweet rice, I eat only sweet rice. That will be a full meal. Well, now you won't have many meals for a long time if you do that. So if we eat only for pleasure, then that will be harmful for our body. So the needs sometimes can be overdriven by desires. So, so for example, now the male female attraction is a natural principle in the world. And that's how reproduction and the human species, in fact, every species goes on. But when a person indulges in that only for pleasure, then that's where people will try to artificially not have children, try to have all kinds of affairs and so many things, which can be, leave alone spiritually, even materially, sociologically disruptive and destructive. So when a need becomes a desire, but that becomes the only, that is done only for pleasure, then it's a problem. This is where it becomes toxic, it becomes harmful. Now, on the other hand, if that is the only pleasure in somebody's life, sometimes if something we hear some bad news, then we may want some comfort food. My life is so uncomfortable, let me just eat something nice. That's okay. I mean, we all may need that food. But if a person has no pleasure in their life except that particular activity, it could be eating, it could be mating, whatever, that is the only pleasure, then also it will become, when I say toxic, it can become excessive. So why am I talking about this right now? While needs and desires can be differentiated, but sometimes the need itself can grow into a desire. So what we need, so that's why among psychologists, there is a debate whether somebody can have food addiction. Of course, like there is Alcoholics Anonymous, there is Foodaholics Anonymous also, which tries to, there's people who eat too much and there are also people who eat too less. Anorexia is quite a serious problem sometimes. But the point is that it is a need. And can we get addicted to something that we need to do? That's a question. But then what is happening is, when that particular desire is becoming excessive and destructive, we could call that as being addictive. So one is when the desires for what we need become excessive. Like money is necessary in everybody's life. But when money becomes, one pursues, one thinks earning money is the only source of pleasure for a person. Just showing how much money I have. Wearing the most expensive clothes, driving in the most expensive cars. Now, one may want to achieve a particular status. There may not be anything wrong in that. But if that is the only source of pleasure, then it becomes a serious problem. In the Vedic tradition, it is described that there are many arthas in life. There is artha. Artha means that which is a source of meaning, that is a source of pleasure, that which is a source of value for us. So artha के अनेक अर्थ है. तो अर्थ का एक अर्थ है अर्थ. That is meaning. But it also means that artha means wealth. So the problem is when an artha becomes the paramartha. That means when we start thinking of something as meaning, which is of value, but we make it the supreme value. This is the most important thing in life. That this making an artha into a paramartha is the source of anartha. So anartha, now the word anartha has two distinct meanings. One is internal and the other is external. So external means ये क्या अनर्थ हो गया? What a terrible thing happened. So external refers to some kind of distress or some adversity. But internal refers to a tendency. A tendency that itself is disruptive. It's a harmful tendency. It could be a disruptive tendency. It could also be a destructive tendency. So when the artha becomes a paramartha, so if for somebody money becomes the most important thing in life, then such a person may not hesitate to backstab even their friends, may even abandon their relatives or reject them. Even family can be broken apart. Because of that becomes greed, becomes excessive. Now work is important for all of us. But when the work becomes the sole identity of a person, that's when a person can become a workaholic. And that's where it becomes a problem. So needs and desires can be differentiated. Sometimes we may have a desire for a need and the desire can become destructive. It can become excessive. Now the other thing is that we humans also have the capacity to desire things that we don't strictly biologically need for survival. Hmm. This is where, from a conceptual perspective, a very reductionistic account of life, a very materialistic reductionist account of life is problematic. For example, in science, there's a theory of evolution. Now, evolution as a phenomena in terms of species having some variation, that's observed, and there's nothing to debate about that. But the theory of evolution claims to explain everything about human existence. But one of the biggest problems that the theory of evolution faces is it cannot explain that if we are just biological creatures, humans are just evolved apes, then the theory of evolution cannot explain why humans would come up with a theory of evolution. What do I mean by that? That what is the survival benefit of actually exploring the nature of the universe? Now, we may find some technological benefits afterwards. But when Newton saw the apple falling, or felt the apple falling, whichever version of the story we want to believe, but he started inquiring what made this fall. Now, he didn't know at that time that that would lead to so much scientific application transformation. In many ways, that was a subsequent benefit that was not known. So, we humans have this capacity for curiosity. And curiosity means we want to make sense of things. It does seem animals don't have that much of a tendency for this. Animals are mostly driven by their biological drives. So to eat, to mate, to defend themselves, and to rest and rejuvenate their bodies. Those are basic biological drives. Now those are there in humans also. But the point I'm making is that desires and needs. So we are trying to understand the difference between the two. So one is, of course, that we can have desires for our needs. But the other is, so needs are associated with what is required for survival. But desires are often for things that we may not need for survival. So one of the things is curiosity. Now we could say this is driven by the urge for pleasure. And maybe there is some truth that we'll look at it. But we humans have that urge to want to know, to try to make sense of things. The animals also have it. But it is more of a circumstantial curiosity. If you keep a rat in a box with a tall wall, the rat will try to, or a mouse rather, a mouse will try to climb up the wall to see what is outside the wall. So that curiosity is there. Even animals will have that curiosity. But here we are talking not just about a circumstantial curiosity, but it's more of an existential curiosity. I want to make sense of things. That's a very fundamental need. Now that may or may not be expressed in people's lives. But our minds, now I'm using the word mind in a general sense, that our minds, it needs to make sense of things. Our mind is like a meaning-making machine. Now, the meaning, whether it makes it right or wrong, that depends. If I greet someone and that person doesn't greet me back, the meaning my mind will make with this person is so rude. Now, maybe that is true, and maybe it is that person just didn't notice us. Maybe that person had something else going on in their life and they were caught in their thoughts. They didn't even notice when we greeted them. But we want to make sense of things. So basically, this I'm talking right now about spiritual awakening, and let me make two more points, and then I'll make things more complicated. No, I'll make things simpler after that. I'll try to bring it all together. See, From a philosophical perspective, mm, we humans are actually, let me complete that point, that why should humans actually come up with something like a theory of evolution? Why do we need to do that? So evolution. So now, not all evolutionists are atheists, but those evolutionists who use evolution to reject spirituality, reject theism, reject any higher reality. Now they can't deny that this search for meaning is actually a very deep rooted part of the human psyche. And they say, oh, people are religious because they are sentimental, they are foolish, they are gullible. But Einstein recognized that. He said that the religions, the sciences, and the arts are all fruits of the same tree of the human search for understanding. Hmm? That these three things, the arts, the sciences, and the religions. By religion, in one sense, we try to make sense of the bigger world. Through science, we try to make sense more of the natural world. And through arts, we try to express our meaning and preserve it. Somebody draws some painting, somebody writes something. We try to preserve it. And we articulate it and we preserve it. So it's actually the same thing, the same search for understanding that drives people towards science. It's the science can have some benefits, no doubt about it, practically. Similarly, religion can also have some practical benefits. There's a in Europe, especially in America also to some extent, but in Europe, after 9/11 and between 2003, 4 till 2015, there was a very aggressive attempt to convert people towards atheism. There's what is called the new atheist movement. And so, but over a period of time, they said no matter how much rationally you try to prove that religion is all nonsense, it just doesn't work. So now there's a new phenomena they come up. They call it atheist spirituality. They have meditations for atheists, mindfulness for atheists, prayers for atheists also. Now what do you pray to? Well, pray to reason, to human reason, human intelligence. So what they try to do is they come together and they have churches for atheists, they call it. And they try to replicate the external forms. They say, okay, humans actually need a sense of community. And yes, does religion give a sense of community? Does spirituality give a sense of community? Yes, it does. But that is not all that there is to it. If people were either religious or spiritual, here right now I'm using the word interchangeably. If required, we'll discuss the separate difference between the two. But if people were seeking only that psychological comfort and belonging to a community, then why would people sometimes do great austerities for that, great sacrifices for that? You could just hang out in some club which gives you whatever food you like to eat, why would people do something? So it's people get something more than just like science, then through technology. So if you consider science has these two aspects to it. There is theory, which is where we understand that there are postulations about the nature of reality. And then there are experiments. Now, so Newton proposed that maybe there's a force that attracts matter, material particles. And the experiment is okay, not just a fruit, a stone, a metallic object, many things will fall, and not just in UK, but all over the world. Now, when the experiments are done repeatedly, then the experiments, when they're successful, they are systematized. And that systematized form becomes technology. So through the experiments done by some people or a group of people, and the results of that are made accessible to everyone, that's what is called as technology. So similarly, spirituality has two aspects to it. There is philosophy and there is practice. So philosophy tells us that, okay, there is a spiritual core to us which goes beyond our physical and psychological sides. There is a divinity that is overseeing the ways of the world. These are philosophical propositions. They're like the theory of science. And then the practice is meant to help us gain experience of that philosophy. So, whereas science is experimental, philosophy is experiential. So, through the practice, what happens is we are meant to get experience. We get some experience. So, somebody might come to a place that is considered holy, maybe a temple or a place where there's an ancient sacred monument, and there people feel, even non-theistic people feel the vibes here are somewhat different. There's something else. I feel peaceful over here. There's one atheist. He went to a Himalayan monastery, and he came back and he wrote, "I am agitated that I was so peaceful there." So his whole life was built on the idea there's nothing. So this whole spiritual is nonsense. So why did I feel so peaceful? So there is experience that comes over there. Now, when this experience, the practice and the experience, when they are systematized, that is when we get a religion. So in many ways, religion is to spirituality what technology is to science. Technology is what goes to the masses, to the millions and even the billions. And that can be used for good or for bad. So when Einstein came up with the mass and energy interchangeability equivalence, from there, the weapons of mass destruction were discovered and deployed. Now, when they were deployed, he regretted that. That what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But that was not his intention. So, technology is what reaches people in general. Similarly, religion is what reaches people in general. Religion may come through culture, come through tradition, and religion can be weaponized for selfish purposes. It can become fanatical. But just as the purpose of technology is to make our outer world more convenient for us, make it more comfortable for us. So religion has many purposes, but one of them is that it helps us make our inner world more ordered, more comfortable. So technology improves the things in our life. Religion means meant to improve the thoughts in our life, the inner world. So science through technology improves the outer world, spirituality through specific practices. So now this can be reduced to feel good. Some people say that even drugs are spiritual. Why? After taking drugs, I feel good. Well, even alcohol you can call as good then, isn't it? Watching TV you can call it as spiritual. You feel good by that. So there is more to spirituality than just a dopamine hit. So this is something much deeper. But the point is that we humans, the same thing which drives us towards science, actually drives us towards spirituality also. The need to make sense of things. Now it goes in two different directions. Science goes more in the direction of the natural world. At what we observe, try to make sense of it. Now spirituality goes more in the direction of the invisible world. But both are attempts to make sense of life. And this modern time fracture or rupture between, say, science and spirituality, that was not there previously. Often those people who were really good thinkers, they were the scientists, they were also the philosophers. We consider many of the pioneering scientists in the Western tradition also, whether Newton or Kekule or many of the other Kelvin and all of them, they were very much had a very dynamic spiritual side to them. So now I'll make two more points here and then I'll put it all together. So basically, why do we humans have this drive? whether it is to go towards science or whether it is to go towards spirituality. Why do we have this? If we are just biological machines who are programmed to survive, hmm, then how much does understanding something add value to survival? And we may say, no, technology has developed so much. But and it's true. But did the founders of technology, founders of science know that this is what would happen? No. It's like sometimes generations upon generations of some understanding has to accumulate before some practical effect of that knowledge comes about. Why would people pass that on? Einstein said that, was Einstein or Newton, both are attributed something similar. They say, if I have seen further than others, it is because I'm standing on the shoulder of giants. Maybe they see one scientist may be credited with a huge discovery, and that credit is there for them. But the build-up of the human knowledge, why would humans for generations build it up and preserve it? Oh, for example, reading literature. Now, what survival value does it add? Sometimes books are preserved, sometimes with great difficulty. Nowadays, with digital technology, it's very easy to preserve books. It's very easy to devalue books also because of their easy availability. But the point is, in the past, it is not easy. So, we humans, so this is where the Gita's insight is very helpful. That see, we have at our existence is three levels. There is the soul, there is the mind, and there is the body. So the body is what is visible to us. The mind is not visible, but its effect is very much visible to us. That somebody's mind is upset, somebody is happy. We see its effect very much visible. Now the soul, in one sense, is the least visible to us. What happens for us is that based on the kind of mind that we have, we direct our needs and our desires in particular ways. So, see, the longing for food is universal. But say if we wake up and we want breakfast. So if a person is a South Indian, for them breakfast would mean idli sambar. Somebody is a Punjabi, that would mean paratha. Somebody is a Gujarati, would mean dhokla. So now what happens is there is the universal need for food, but it's expressed in different ways. So that happens through the mind. Now if you look at a cow or any animal, a cow just keeps eating the same grass day after day after day, month after month. It doesn't say, I want something more tasty today. Isn't it? It just keeps eating that. So what happens for us is that while our body is driven by needs, our mind has desires that often direct the needs in particular ways. So I want food, but I want this kind of food. So the body requires some things for survival, but the mind has desires. And if our desires are not fulfilled, people feel suffocated. Feel, this is terrible. I want to do this and I can't do this. And I want to do this and this person is saying, don't do it. So our desires are also important for us. That's why people say, I have dreams, I have aspirations. I want to do things in life. When the Gita says that this world is a place of distress, it is a place which is dukkhalaya, it says. Now the distress can be at different levels. At a very big level, it is devastation. Devastation means that we end up getting something which is the complete opposite of what we either need or desire. So if what I want is this way, or what I desire, let's keep both of them together at the same time right now. But what I get is the exact opposite. So what I want, let's use the neutral word over here, seek. What I seek and what I get. This is devastation. No, we seek to build a big house and say the earthquake occurs and the whole house is destroyed. Oh, so that's devastation. Recently, this fires occurred in LA. Terrible what happened over there. So it's devastation. So this is distress. But life's distress are not restricted to this alone. At the other level, there could be dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction is certainly not devastation, but still there is something I seek, and there is what I get. So, so what I get falls far short of what I seek. Hmm? And now, when this happens, you can say, stop complaining. Your life is good. Yeah, it is good, but it's not as good as I wanted it to be. And it is frustrating at a particular time. If somebody had invested a lot in a particular career, a particular job, a particular relationship, a particular achievement, and if that doesn't work out, or it works out but doesn't turn out to be that good, this is where people start feeling something is missing in my life. For some people, something is missing in my life. Some people say my life is itself missing. I don't have a life at all. But the thing is that even when it's feeling something is missing in my life, that is also, it is not a small pain. We can say, yeah, it's that, say, I was in Scotland, I met some devotees who were from Ukraine. They had a flourishing devotee community. Many of them were professionals. They were living very comfortably there. This whole war has devastated their life. And it's a terrible thing. But suppose say we come to America, we migrate over, we settle down, we are successful. But still, maybe we had particular dreams when I came to America. And life, somehow, it's like life does not get the message of what our dreams were. So quite often life falls short of our expectations. And this is also, at one level, it can be very, very frustrating. It's not devastating, but it's still frustrating. So for us, humans, we are in one sense designed, going back to these three levels, soul, mind, and body. Now we are designed in such a way that we actually want more pleasure than what the body can offer. We want our soul, the soul is the topic of spiritual awakening. So animals also have a soul, but their soul is actually in a significantly diminished consciousness. And that's why they are more or less satisfied with whatever pleasure they get. Now, if you consider a grass is also living. The only point of its life is to grow. And grow also only to a particular height. Beyond that, they don't grow. Animals, they eat very similar food. There's some newness in their life, but they mate whenever the season comes up, whether the opportunity comes up. But beyond that, it's like dogs don't get depressed. No, unless they are contaminated by the association of depressed human beings. Nowadays, this is a big thing. There are dog therapists. So, but generally, animals in the animal forms, actually living beings are satisfied with whatever pleasure the body naturally gives them. But in the human form, we need more pleasure than what the body naturally gives us. So remember I said that what I said, if the needs become our only source of pleasure, or we seek the needs only for pleasure, that's where it becomes a problem. So generally animals don't die because of getting some sexually transmitted diseases, because of unrestricted sexuality. They don't suffer from obesity, generally speaking. So why? Because they just eat according. A lion may catch a prey and it may eat a prey, but after it is filled its belly, it will just leave it and go away. And some other cultures like jackals and others, they come and eat food from there. Foxes and wolves sometimes. So basically, in one sense, in the animal form, or in the, let's put it in the non-human form, it's like the desires and the needs, they are more or less the same. And when desires and needs are both the same, if they are fulfilled, we don't know whether we are joyful, but at least we are peaceful. And when they are unfulfilled, then we become agitated. So, for example, if an animal, if a cow or a bull or a horse is in the rut, they have that season when they want to mate. They can become very wild at that time. If a lion is hungry and is not given some food, they become very agitated. But once those things are taken care of, they become more or less peaceful. But for us humans, what happens is that we have our needs, but our desires are far bigger than our needs. Hmm? And this is not a bad thing. This is not greed. It's an oversimplification to call it greed. It can become greed, but so we humans actually desire more happiness than what, when I said need, as I said, need is what is required for our survival. We want more pleasure than what our body naturally offers us. That's why if I have to eat food, we create so many different cuisines by which we try to enjoy food. So, like that, we try to expand. Hmm. However, this expansion, so when we start exploring, okay, where can I find more joy in my life? So we may direct it at the level of the body, hmm, and try to gain more pleasure through physical indulgence. But there is a limitation to that. We just cannot extend it beyond a particular capacity. Our The whole world will tell us that we don't have good enough objects to enjoy, and that's why we're not happy. But even if we had the best objects to enjoy, our body's capacity to enjoy itself is limited. Somebody may own a five-star hotel and they can eat as much as they want, but they can't eat as much as they want, isn't it? The belly has a particular capacity. There are some Egyptian pharaohs. They tried to get their physicians to create painless vomiting medication. So they would have these golden plates in which they would get a feast and eat the feast. And after they would eat it, they would have another bowl in which they would take a painless vomiting pill, vomit it all out, and then eat again. They tried that, but those who tried that didn't survive. They all died very young. Because it's not just that the stomach doesn't have capacity. Then the whole alimentary canal has to take in all the food, process all the food. It's just too much work. So in one of the in one of, not the biggest pyramid is the Giza, isn't it? I think the Sphinx, one of the second biggest pyramids. There a quote is there. They put it that you live on 25% of what you eat. On the remaining 75% lives your physician. So the idea here is that we want more pleasure than what our body can give us. We can try to get it through the body, but it just doesn't work beyond it. Now we can try to get it through our mind. Okay, I talked about this particular aspect, that dissatisfaction and devastation. We can try to make plans. I will make things to happen in this way. I'll make things happen in that way, and we may try to get pleasure through that. But that also doesn't last for long, because we can't control so many things. We may try, but we can't bend the world to our will for very long. So that also doesn't really work for us. And that's why for humans, quite often, see, when we make some plans and the plans are frustrated, then we may still have food to live. But when people commit suicide, it is generally not because they are starving. In some cases it happens. But it's more because, what is the point of living? All that I dreamt of is all gone away from me. My life is turning into a nightmare. I just don't want to live. It's a very terrible situation, and suicide is a tragic social health problem in the world, mental health problem at a sociological level. But the point is, animals are generally not known to commit suicide. Again, unless they are contaminated by human association. But the thing is, for us, we need something more than just the fulfillment of our needs. And when that is not fulfilled, then we just, I just don't want to live. So, this spiritual awakening, when does it happen? That, see, what happens is, at one level, we can say my needs, we need to fulfill them. And fulfill, that's like a basic requirement. Now, Maslow had a particular hierarchy, and different people are talking about different things. Now, after that, we have our desires. And now what happens is, all of our desires cannot be fulfilled. Some of our desires are fulfilled. Mhm. But now, on this path of life, desires can be fulfilled or desires can be not just unfulfilled. Unfulfilled is not such a problem. Desires can be like frustrated. So now, when the desires are fulfilled and we realize, hey, I fulfilled my desires, but this did not lead to fulfillment of heart. I wanted to be famous, I wanted to be popular, I wanted to have a big house, I wanted to do this, and not none of us can say all of our desires are fulfilled, but we all can say some of our desires are fulfilled. But the fulfillment of desires does not lead to the fulfillment of heart. Now, on the other hand, sometimes our desires may be frustrated. And at the time when desires are frustrated, that time also we may get the question, what am I to do? So both of these can actually lead us to spiritual awakening. Now, spiritual awakening means that what is really desirable in life. Like I tried to get it, I didn't get it. What am I to do now? So, what really matters in life? Now, people can go in two extreme ways to that, and I'll conclude with this point that say somebody is very invested in a relationship and suddenly there's an accident or there's some disease and that person loses a loved one. Then it's like, what is the point of life? What am I living for? So, on the other, so that is where this frustration, and then start thinking what really matters in life. And the other side is that we achieve something. Maybe we have a happy family life, and still we feel something is missing in my life. I fulfilled my desires, but there's no fulfillment of heart. So either way, when that question comes, maybe there is something more that I should be seeking. And it's something more is not more of the same thing. More of the same thing is, okay, let me get more money, let me get more power, let me get more popularity. Will that really lead to happiness? Or is there something more in life? So for me, in my spiritual journey, somehow, now that I look back at it, actually both of these things happened. And most of you know that I have polio. So for me, my mother was a very big formative influence. I don't remember how I got polio, whatever happened. It was that my mother took me to a clinic to get vaccination and polio vaccination, but somehow the fridge in which the polio vaccine had been kept had its power supply lost the previous night. And the attendant noticed that. So the germs in it increased. And then that injection was given to me and that caused polio. So I don't remember that, but I was about 2.5 or 3. And at that time, a distant relative had come to meet her. And she was consoling my mother. So it's so sad that your son got polio. And I remember my mother's voice, very calm, clear, confident. She says, whatever he lacks physically, God will provide him intellectually. I don't know why she said that, but somehow that stayed with me. Not the God part, the intellectually part, at least initially. And I found that I was good at studying and I went forward with my life that way. But then when I was Like when I studied and I had the crown achievement of my intellectual when I was in 10th. I did quite well in the 10th, and the district collector of the district came to meet me. I came to our home to felicitate us because I was physically handicapped. So he said that I could have gone to his office, but he came to our home, and our picture came in the newspapers and everything. My parents were very happy. And it was that very night my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 blood cancer, and then it all ended within one month itself. And I just completely devastated at that time. And then, so I had achieved something substantial. That's what started sparking off this spiritual. What is the meaning of life? That's when I started reading more psychological, philosophical, spiritual books. Then it happened that I gave GRE in my engineering. My mother wanted me to go to America, and she had a brother who had come to America, and he wanted me to come here and settle down and inherit his company. He didn't have a son, but so I gave GRE, and then throughout my life, one of my dreams was I wanted to be the first in my class, and I was always among the toppers, but somehow I was never the first. I was joint first at many occasions, and one time I was the first. But what had happened was the teacher had made a marking mistake, and so I pointed out to her that actually my answer is correct. And so I had come second because of that. And she said, yeah, you're right. But she was a new teacher, and she said that this is the first exam that I've assessed, and everybody makes mistake. But if you make a mistake on who is first and second, that will be very embarrassing for me. Can you let it go? I thought, no, I can't let it go. But I asked my mother. My mother says she's your teacher, and for you, for this matter of her career, you should let it go. So I agreed. I thought very happy, but now I was thinking that at that time it was a big sacrifice from my side. But now I look back, it was a sacrifice by my mother also. She could have got the bragging rights. My son is first in class. but but anyway, so when I gave the GRE exam, I was quite good at language, and I did very well. I came first, not just first in my college. I came first in the history of my college. I was first in the entire state of Maharashtra, practically. And I was extremely happy. Yahoo kind of thing. But I found that after some time, just like looking at the mark sheet doesn't give much happiness. Isn't it? How long can you just look at it? Then, of course, became a celebrity in my college. Everybody was congratulating me. But then somehow it happened that 3 of my friends, one after another, forgot to congratulate me. They're not friends, they were acquaintances. But then, when the first friend forgot to congratulate me, I was annoyed. When the second friend forgot to congratulate me, I was irritated. And when the third friend forgot to congratulate, I was enraged. I was seething with frustration. But I didn't want to sound pathetic by asking, why are you not congratulating me? So at that time, somehow I felt as if I had some kind of a out of body experience. Not exactly, I don't know what it was. I felt as if I was looking at myself from above. I felt, hey, wait a minute. You thought that becoming a topper would make you happy. But instead of making you happy, it has actually made you more dependent for your happiness on others. In the past, you could just hang out with your friends, but now you are so needy for their congratulations. I started looking ahead in my life, whatever I could see. And maybe I could get into Ivy League college. Maybe I would I would do some significant research. I would win some awards, whatever. I felt none of that would actually free me from this need of external congratulation and felicitation for happiness. So I felt, is there something in life that will actually give intrinsic happiness? And that's where in 622 in the Bhagavad Gita, I found a verse where Krishna says, when we become spiritually connected, when we become spiritually enriched, Yam labdva cha param labham manyate nadhikam tataha yasmin sthito dukkena gurunapi vichalyate. In the Gita says, when we become spiritually realized, when we start connecting with Krishna, when that yoga that is being talked about over here, when that fulfilled is there, then what happens? We get such an enrichment within that we no longer crave for something else. Externally, we don't, oh, I want this, I want this, I want this. And externally, if something bad also happens to us, we don't lament too much because of that. So this is where this was my moment when I realized fulfillment of desire does not lead to the fulfillment of heart. So what will actually lead to the fulfillment of heart? And that's when I came across the Gita and I read this verse. I'm still far away from that particular level of complete inner enrichment, but I'm on that journey. And this spiritual awakening can happen for each one of us in different ways. One of the ways it happens is simply by coming in the association of spiritually awakened people. But what needs to happen? It's not just coming in a satsang or doing some puja. That's all good. But if we are to become spiritual, that awakening has to happen. And that awakening is where we start our understanding my desires are, they go beyond my needs. But they should not go in a direction that ends up harming me. That's what happens when the desires become excessive at the physical level, at the material level. But we are made for something more than this world. We are made for being spiritual and finding enrichment in a spiritual connection with the Lord. So some of us may experience this awakening early in our life because there has been some spiritual practice in the previous life. Some of us, the experiences in this life might awaken us. But either way, we all can be awakened, and that's how we can fulfill not just everybody talks about fulfilling the potential. It's fulfilling the potential not just of our mind, not just of our body, but the fulfilling the potential of our souls. And that is what the Bhagavad Gita's path provides us. I'll summarize what I discussed today. The topic was broadly spiritual awakening. And within that, I talked about broadly three main points. The first point was we analyze, we observe ourselves. That we analyze that, see, we all have, we are moved. What moves me in my life is my desires and my needs. But sometimes these two may pull us in opposite directions. And that itself causes tension. But sometimes what happens is, even when we desire a need, that itself can also become destructive. When that is we do it only for pleasure. So if we desire food, but we eat only food for pleasure, that will be a problem. Or if food is the only pleasure in our life. So by self-observation, we all can recognize that there is something within me which wants something more than what I can normally have through the fulfillment of my desire. So analysis. Now, from that analyze, so spiritually, I use this acronym ART for this. And from there, we realize. What is it that we realize? We realize that I discussed many things within this particular point. Here I talked about how we have Artha. When the Artha becomes the Paramartha, then what it leads to is Anartha. That's where we tend to become self-destructive. We start hurting ourselves. So what do we realize? We realize that my own desires seem to be working against me. So we realize that what we want, our desires, they go far beyond our needs. What we need is small, and what we desire is much bigger. Now we can dismiss it as greed, and that's possible. It can go towards greed. But this fact that we desire something more, that can also lead to spiritual growth. What exactly happens is that we want more pleasure than what the body can provide us, or what the body requires for its needs. And then now we are exist in the three level. There is the soul, there is the mind, and then there is the body. Mhm. Now, if you consider these three, now I started by talking about the initial difference. Desires are what we do for pleasure. Needs are what we do for survival. So if we consider the soul, the mind, and the body. Now, the body's needs have to be fulfilled by everyone. There's no doubt about that. And without that, we'll just not function. But beyond that, what happens for us is we start centering our life, like when we want to find the artha in our life, find what is really matters. At a first level, it is the body's needs that we fulfill. Then after that, we start fulfilling our mind's desires. And that's where we start growing in our life. Now, when we try to fulfill our mind's desires, there are two possibilities. Sometimes they may be frustrated, and sometimes they may be fulfilled, but the desires are fulfilled, but we are frustrated. We feel something is missing in our life. We talk about how distress has both these aspects. That one is total devastation, but the other is also dissatisfaction. My desire is fulfilled, but I am not fulfilled. So it is then we move towards the soul's longing. The soul longs for a personal connection with the divine. Without that connection, we will not find satisfaction. So we can go from the path of being frustrated toward the soul's longing, or we can go from the point of being fulfilled toward the soul's longing. But either way, we need to go in that direction. And here we discuss how also this we have a search need for meaning in our life. Our mind is like a meaning making machine. We now in the search for meaning, we may go towards science and we may go towards spirituality. It's the same crew. There's no tension between the two of them necessarily. Now, science has theory and experiment. And from the experiment comes technology. Spirituality has philosophy and practice, which is meant to give us some experience. Now, from the practice comes religion. So, for all of us, when does the spiritual awakening happen? It doesn't happen because our bodily needs are fulfilled. It doesn't come because our mind's desires are fulfilled. It comes when our mind desires are fulfilled and still we are not fulfilled. Or our mind desires are not fulfilled and they start thinking, what should I be pursuing in my life? So, what really matters? What will actually bring me fulfillment in my heart? So, we are made in such a way that we won't be fulfilled unless we look for something bigger beyond the material. And the Bhagavad Gita, the moment when that happens, the Bhagavad Gita is there to guide us all upwards in our journey toward Krishna. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So this is we transcend the body and the mind. So it's art. Any questions or comments? Yes. Do we have a mic? Can let me know till what time we should go on. Mhm. I think your desire transcends others' needs. Yes, please.
Prabhuji, I had three questions, but depending on time, yeah.
Yeah.
The first question was like,
we're talking about needs today. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, also, so there are a lot of people I meet, and a lot of them have a lot of potential to grow in spiritual journeys and obviously other aspects of life. But the hunger is sometimes missing. Now, there's one way where we try to inspire them, obviously through our own examples, and we share the knowledge and whatnot, and they take up to spirituality, and then the hunger comes down because of certain aspects in life. And like, I'm trying to think, like, how much do you kind of keep reinforcing the same point, versus like how you mentioned it in your life also. There was a point when you had a higher calling, right, and you started looking for it. Let them, like, kind of feel the pain or the hunger for growing to the next level. How do we kind of balance that?
Yeah. See, everybody needs a bit of pushing, because the spiritual growth doesn't feel like a need for most of us. So that's why a little bit pushing is required. Now we have to see whether the pushing is actually pushing them towards spirituality or away from spirituality. Mhm. So I was in Texas, and actually not this year, but last year, a few years ago, and there was a car ahead of me. And the car had a bumper sticker. It had a quote: "Oh God, please save me from your preachers." Save me from your preachers. Normally, in the Christian tradition, the idea is God saves us through his preachers. But if the preachers are too pushy, they are too judgmental, they are too fear inducing, holier than thou, and people will get alienated. So we also need to recognize that spiritual growth for many people is a multi lifetime journey, and not everybody will grow at the same pace. So maybe for some people, what may happen in this lifetime is the Agyan Sukruti, that they get some favorable appreciation for spirituality. So we would like everyone to go on the entire spiritual journey, but this is a spiritual appreciation. Who knows? They may not take it up now, but it may be that it's not just we are trying to help them become spiritual. Like Krishna is in their hearts, and Krishna is also wanting them to have a relationship with him. So maybe if we open the doors for them, they may not walk through right now, but maybe they go through certain things in their life, 1 year down the line, 5 years down the line, and then that awakening happens. And then if we have opened the door for them, they'll walk through. But if we open the door and drag them through, that will generally not work. They will have such a bad experience. They will go and they will not want to come back. So I think little pushing is required, but we have to be observing what is the pushing doing. If the person is becoming alienated, antagonistic, then better stop pushing. Thank you. Yes, sir. We'll come back to you. If you have more time, we'll come back to you. Yeah, we'll just come to you. Have a question?
Hare Krishna. So for spiritual awakening to occur for someone, there has to be a dissatisfaction of sorts, and then inquiry or curiosity to find something greater. At the same time, as we progress in Bhakti Yoga, we're often taught that to cultivate a mood of satisfaction with whatever happens to us and whatever situation we're put in. So how do you find the balance of being satisfied with our situation versus taking action or being curious to pursue something greater?
How do you find balance between satisfaction and curiosity, or the urge for growth? We humans are by nature uh, growth seeking. Wherever we are, we want to improve things. We want to improve things in different ways, but we all want to improve things. If we come and move into a home, we want to beautify the home. We want to visit a particular place, we want to go and see the most beautiful places over there. So we want to improve the externals around us. That's natural. But then, as I said, if that is all we are doing, that's when it becomes a problem. So we get our externals to a particular level of yukta ahara vihara, Krishna says, a particular level of functionality, and then we may keep some efforts to improve that, but that doesn't become our driving force. Then that's where we turn inwards. So even in our spiritual journey, there can be dissatisfaction, which can be good or which can be bad. So dissatisfaction which makes us want to move forward, that is good. But if the dissatisfaction becomes a perpetual sense of guilt or frustration or unworthiness, that's not healthy. So why am I want to grow spiritually. So dissatisfaction, it can be good if it inspires us to grow. Hmm? But three things, if it leads us to guilt, why don't I have so much spiritual hunger? Or why am I not more serious about bhakti? Or it leads to feelings of frustration. Dissatisfaction is one thing, frustration is much deeper. Frustration is when nothing is working, I just don't know why am I here? What am I doing over here? Or there leads to feeling of insecurity. Maybe there's something terribly wrong with me, that's why. Maybe I'll never grow spiritually. No, we will grow. It's our spiritual growth is the formation of a relationship. It'll happen in its own way. Like sometimes when we are chanting, we have to focus on Krishna. Now, but sometimes if you chant, sometimes once I was not able to focus my mind and started very fiercely, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And then suddenly, I had this, I felt as if I was looking at myself from above. I said, am I trying to control my mind and focus on Krishna? And am I trying to control my mind and push it toward Krishna? Or am I trying to control Krishna and push him into my mind? Isn't it? So the thing is that it will happen at its pace. So one aspect of if we are not the whole, we are not God, we are not the supreme, we are the servants of God, then we should also accept that we don't have control over how fast we will spiritually grow. And we have to accept the pace at which we are going. We can seek more, but that should not lead to resentment. That should not lead to a strong negative emotion, either towards God, towards ourselves, or towards the whole process itself. Growth happens naturally. So just like a child is not going to grow up overnight. Similarly, we will also grow up naturally. Okay? Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hare Krishna. I recently started learning about the Vedic astrology. And there's a particular way of like the souls make a pact of what they want to grow and develop in a particular lifetime. It could be, I want to have better relationship with my children this time, or I want to have a better career this time, or something. It's like a pact you make, and then you come into a form, right? And when I think about Bhagavad Gita, and it's a very high level because I haven't studied it as much, is that the purpose of your soul is bhakti and to meet the divine. That seems to imply that all the souls have the same purpose. How do I think about this two ways of approaching what the soul is here to do?
A thoughtful question. Yeah. It's the example is given. Say if there is a mountain and there's an ocean. Now there's a trickle of water. There's some water which is going to flow towards the ocean. So that ocean is Krishna. Now the material world is like the mountain, and the drop of water is we, the soul. Now each soul has to find its path towards the ocean. Each soul is like a river moving toward the ocean. Now the important thing is that while the river moves toward the ocean, along the way, the river also does a lot of good to all the life forms that are on the side, on its banks. So like that, for us, based on our particular nature, our particular talents, our particular interests, our particular stages of growth that we have come to and not yet come to. We all have some karmic debts from our previous lives which we need to pay or neutralize. So we will have to find our individual path to Krishna. And in that individual path towards Krishna, we will have to heal from particular wounds. We'll have to grow in particular ways. So that individuality is also very much a part of bhakti. If we consider the Pandavas, they were all great devotees. But each of them was an individual. If you look at the Mahabharata, you cannot think of a pair of siblings more different than Yudhishthira and Bhima. Yudhishthira was like a Brahman. They were all Kshatriyas. They were all meant to be warriors and protectors. But Yudhishthira was more like a Brahman Kshatriya. Now try to resolve everything with peace, even if it is a great personal cost. If Yudhishthira was a Brahman Kshatriya, Bhima was a Kshatriya. He was Kshatriya squared. He was just looking for an opportunity to teach others a lesson, to use his prowess. Both of them were united in their devotional aspirations. So there is abundant room for individuality in the path of bhakti also. Okay? Thank you. Yes, please.
Hare Krishna. So going back to the previous question, how do we balance patience, self-forgiveness, and compassion while we are trying to go through the process of like anartha nivritti and growing in bhakti, while also not being too complacent or too comfortable in our body? So like a simple example from my life is like waking up in the morning for japa circle or mangalarti versus like getting rest from a busy, stressful week, or like very austere fasting. And then another question is, how do we pray for growth in bhakti? And how do we surrender to the process? Because in Srimad Bhagavatam, it says that spiritual growth after a certain point entirely depends on the grace and mercy of a guru.
Yeah. Okay, so the first is that for each one of us, any form of discipline. Sometimes discipline can seem, somebody else is giving me the rules and I have to follow those rules. I was in America last year and I was staying with a devotee family. The son was a young adult, a teenager. He just got his driving license. He was driving to various programs. And one day he told me, we spent a lot of time talking about various things. Now, I have a lot of interest in English literature. So we started talking about that. And one day he told me that I feel as if my parents don't love me at all. I said, no, I've seen your parents are really concerned about you. They care for you. He says, yes, but I feel as if my parents love a future version of me. And they're just tolerating me till that future version comes. No, it's definitely very insightful to think like that. But, sometimes parents have a lot of expectations, and it's good to have expectations. They inspire us to grow. But it is not that the parents don't love the child as they are. It's not that Krishna will love a future version of us when we become pure devotees. Krishna is just tolerating us right now. Not like that. Krishna loves us as we are. He also wants us to become better. But he loves us as we are. So it's like when we talk about, say, if we consider Krishna is here, then around Krishna, there are many circles of love. There are his pure devotees, say the gopis of Vrindavan. There are the Vaikuntavasis. There are the Vrindavanvasis, the Vaikuntavasis. There are pure devotees in this world. Like that, ultimately, every living being is in one of the circles of love for Krishna. Krishna says, Surudam Sarva Bhutanam. He doesn't say Surudam Mad Bhaktanam. He says, I am the well-wisher of everyone. I care for everyone. So, even if somebody is in this circle of love, the whole point is, we all, from whichever circle we might be in, we would like to go into a more inner circle of love. but Krishna loves us where we are also. So there is, now when you talk about discipline, so we shouldn't feel insecure because our spiritual practice is not up to a particular standard right now. So when we talk about discipline, the best way to understand it, it's like a negotiation. It's a negotiation between the present me, I as I am right now, and the potential me. The present me and the potential me. Now, if I care, say, if we are caught in a storm and everything is cut off, hmm, and we have food only for we have food for one. We have to make the food last for 1 week before some rescue is going to come, and we have enough food for 1 week. Now, today I can eat so much, I can eat a lot more, and I won't have anything after 5 6 days. The other is that I may say I want to have food for the future, and I starve myself today. But then there'll be food for the future me, but there maybe no future me. Isn't it? That's also possible. So if we care only for the present me, what will happen is that will be at the cost of the future. But if we care only for the future me, that will be at the cost of the present me. So if we care only for the present me, we will stagnate. Hmm? We may even degrade. Like I talk about that, okay, I want to enjoy life right now. I want to rest, I want to do this, I want to do that. It's important we do some of those things. But if that's all we are doing, we will not grow in life. If a person, I just want to enjoy life right now. If a kid says, okay, you may not have a life worth enjoying in the future. You don't have a job, you don't have a degree, you don't have a career. On the other hand, if we care only for the potential me, then what will happen is we will suffocate. We'll feel this is too much. It's like that's what this boy was feeling, that my parents care only for my future me. And then from that, but if we feel suffocate, then after that we rebel. We resent and we rebel against it. So each individual has to negotiate in such a way that the present me and the potential me both are nurtured. So how this will happen? This will be different for different people. If a parent has parents have 2 children, they cannot use the same disciplinary formula for both children. Each child is individual. So like that, each one of us is an individual, and we need to see, okay, how do I negotiate between the present me and my potential? So yes, regarding the fasting, I may fast one day, but then what happens is I fast one day, the next day I have to go to the hospital fast. Is it because I fall sick or something like that? So we don't want to do that. So the present me and the potential me. So I want to wake up early in the morning, but then I have a whole day ahead also. And if I'm sleepy or groggy during the day, that's not good. So then I have to see, can I restructure my life so that I sleep early, then I wake up early? If it's not possible right now, then I have to see what is reasonable for me. At what time can I sleep? What time can I wake? That's why what I generally find helpful is when we talk about standards, we could look at them in a digital way, or we can look at them in an analog way. What does the digital means? If you're doing this, you are a good devotee. If you can't do this, you're a terrible devotee. No. Analog it's like a spectrum. So if it's a spectrum, what this means is each one of us can, with respect to standards, we can decide that this is what is desirable for me. But this is what is non-negotiable. So now some days I might be able to do what is desirable. Maybe I want to read Bhagavad Gita every day for 1 hour. Some days this life will be so busy that's impossible. But maybe, I'll just pick up the Bhagavad Gita and read 1 page. That takes 5 minutes. Let me do that. Or if I can't do it every day, then maybe in a week I want to read for 3 hours. Or read for 2 hours, whatever. So if we can see spirituality as analog, that there is a spectrum. There is something below which no matter what happens, I'm not going to do. That's non-negotiable for me. And then from there we can try to go toward the desirable as much as we can. And that's much more healthier way to sustain our spiritual journey. Okay. Thank you very much. Shall we stop? Yes, please. So, okay. Yeah, so after the session also I'll be available for some time. So,
Just want to share that after the session also you can spend some time with Prabhu. That's what this is for. So please come spend some time with him. I want to really thank Chaitanya Charan Prabhu for gracing this place and giving such a clarifying and inspiring lecture. I think what stood out for me the most was your personal journey, Prabhu. And even though we may not all go through similar level of difficulty, we've all gone through some versions of it. So I hope that inspires us to lead a more spiritual life and go for the bigger desires. We'll open up for Prashadam soon. If one of you can sing the Prashadam prayers, we'd really appreciate it.
so yes, can I answer about the books?
Yeah, please.
So I already mentioned this book, Prayers Inspired by the Bhagavad Gita. Many devotees have told me that it also helps them in their chanting. Just read, look at a picture of Krishna, read a prayer, reflect a little bit on it, and then you can also be more centered for our daily prayer time. And there's a very accessible table of contents where each prayer is summarized in one sentence. So depending on what situation we are going through in our life, we can just offer a prayer, look at which prayer may resonate with our needs. There are 122 over there. I hope that I'll make two more. This is based on the first 6 chapters of the Gita. I want to make 2 more so that we'll have 366 prayers inspired by the Gita. I'll be on the next 2 6 chapter sections. And then this is Gita for the CEO. This is nowadays there's a lot of interest in corporate circles for learning some wisdom from ancient texts. Stoicism is becoming very popular in the West, and there is some ikigai and something like that from China and Japan, and that also becoming popular. Art of War is popular. So the HarperCollins is a prominent publisher. They asked me to write this book, Gita for the CEO. So I have phrased this also as a conversation between 2 people, one both in the corporate world, one who knows the Gita and one who wants to know the Gita. So they go on a nature walk and a retreat and they discuss the Gitas. And I've drawn some simple diagrams of the kind which I was drawing over here to explain the Gita's concept. I've drawn 10 principles from the Gita. And this is not just for CEOs, it's for everyone who has some leadership role in their life. It could be in our home, we are leaders for our children. We have the potential to develop from where we are, both spiritually and materially. Arjuna was a great devotee, but Arjuna was also a leader and an archer. So how the Gita can help us in our daily life, that's described in this book. And especially if you have friends, colleagues, relatives who may not yet be ready to connect with the Gita, they may read but not understand, or may not be inclined to read, then this book could act as a trigger for their spiritual curiosity and awakening. So both these books are available over here, and I'll be here to sign the books also if any of you want after the session. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.